Hello, welcome back to Dr. Darnise's House of Religion, Magic, and Conjure. And this month we have noted expert Dr. Roger Sneed joining us to talk about Afro-Futurism. So I do hope you will stay tuned through the whole thing. Remember, this is part one that you're catching a little glimpse of here, and the full interview will be on Patreon. So I hope you will join us there. So just to get things started, I'm going to read Dr. Sneed's bio, and you will all be duly impressed, I'm sure. Dr. Roger A. Sneed is the Dorothy and B.H. Peace Jr. Associate Professor and Chair of Furman University's Department of Religion. He received his Ph.D. in religion from Vanderbilt University in 2006, his Master of Divinity from Candler School of Theology at Emory University in 1999, his Master of Arts in History and Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Tulsa in 1996 and 1994. He is the author of Representations of Homosexuality, African American Religious and Cultural Criticism, published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2010. So if y'all want to go get that from Amazon. His current book, tentatively titled The Dreamer and the Dream, Afro-Futurism and Black Religious Thought, will be published by the Ohio State University Press. All right. And, you know, Ohio's in the house. Woo, woo. I'm from Ohio, y'all. So, Dr. Sneed, thank you for joining. How are you?
I am well. How are you doing?
I am great. Even in the time of the big coronavirus, we are well, and I'm glad that you've been able to join us because this is a whole thing.
Isn't it?
Right. So just a little background. I just read his bio, but Dr. Sneed and I have known each other for some years, and our paths crossed professionally and personally. We have some interest in pop culture and house music and lots of things, and we're great Facebook buddies, and I always appreciate Dr. Sneed's commentary on Facebook. So just to let y'all know that he is a friend of mine and somebody who is especially interesting. And so I've asked him to join us to talk about Afro-Futurism. And so, Dr. Sneed, I'm going to turn it over to you as you define for us what Afro-Futurism is, because I think, you know, people are starting to see the term a bit more in pop culture, but not necessarily really know what the definition is or what this genre is. So could you please enlighten us?
Okay. Afrofuturism was a term coined by Mark Derry in, I believe, 1993 or 1994. And the piece, which the name of the piece I don't have off the top of my head. I'm blanking on the name of the piece, but it was an interview between him, Greg Tate, Trisha Rose, and Samuel Delaney. And in this piece, he's talking about black people writing science fiction. And so Mark Derry, a white male, coins the term Afrofuturism. So on one level, we might think of it as black people doing science fiction. But on a deeper level, it might be black people using science fiction as a critique, or not just science fiction, but other forms of speculative fiction. So we might look at horror, science fiction, and fantasy as ways in which black people enter into speculative fiction to critique white supremacy and racism, but also cast black people in speculative fictions that they have been erased from or excluded from historically. So that's kind of two levels of thinking about Afrofuturism.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of really a brief.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
You said it's to critique white supremacy. How does that actually work, considering that it's various types of speculative fiction, horror, etc.? How does it work in a critique?
Well, I think on one level we might look at, let's see, if I were looking at someone like, we'll probably get into her later, Octavia Butler, and her parable books, what one level of reading her work might say, okay, well, how is she critiquing white supremacy in the presence of the figure Lauren Oya Olamina? How does the creation of this religion, Earthseed, critique or function as a critique of American Christianity? I mean, again, if you get into the second book, you kind of see this Christian America that rises up as a theocracy that winds up persecuting Earthseed. So that's a critique at work. Also, in her last book before she died, Fledgling, where the character Shori, as a black vampire, is critiquing this older tradition of vampires who hate her, if I'm remembering the book correctly. So you kind of have direct and indirect critiques within Afrofuturism. And I might even argue that the very presence and centering of black people within science fiction or speculative fiction functions as the implicit critique. Because, again, those of us who are sci-fi nerds, we know that, when you watch science fiction, or particularly heroic science fiction, who's always the captain of the Enterprise, who's the main figure. So even recentering or centering black bodies itself functions as an implicit critique of the white supremacy that we find rife within science fiction and other speculative fictions.
Yeah, because a lot of times people might not really think of it, black people included, specifically that, wow, in science fiction, I don't really see us represented that much, because we might think of science fiction through the lens of what we've seen over the years, and we don't even imagine ourselves there quite yet. And so, or we might see ourselves. I mean, we might see one or two black characters or characters who are not white because they're green or blue or something. But I think it's really more. It seems to me, anyway. You might know differently, that it's more recent that there's been a larger conversation about, wow, even in a speculative science fiction kind of way or speculative universe, white people still don't quite see us there in their reality. So when we create our own science fiction and speculative fiction, and by placing ourselves there, that's the critique, the implicit critique that you're talking about, right?
Right.
Just by being there, so to speak. Just by being there.
Yeah. We're so used to seeing ourselves as second or third fiddle to the white characters. We are, if you will, the support people, or as the joke goes, at least in horror films, if there's a black person in the horror film, we're the first person to die.
Right.
So we wind up becoming the example that shows how real the threat is. So, Afrofuturism, I'm thinking of Ytasha Womack's definition of the Afrofuturist, as I'm paraphrasing her, as any black geek or nerd who read comic books and watched Star Trek or Star Wars as a kid, saw that notable absence of us and set out to do something about it. So the Afrofuturist then uses the speculative medium to correct the medium by placing us at the center of the discourse as opposed to at the periphery.
Exactly. Well, can you just share with us how you got to this? I mean, you and I are both religion scholars, and people don't think about religion in this way, right? And you and I go to our conference, American, the academy, the conference, and there's papers on all kinds of things under the sun. And so, could you talk about how you got here?
It started. There are a bunch of vectors. In some sense, I'd always wanted to write this, but when I was in graduate school, I said I wanted to write about science fiction and ethics, and Victor Anderson, my advisor, wisely said, "You're not going to get a job with that." He had a sense of how the field works, and he was right. And what you're observing is that we're right. That's not quote unquote sexy. After I wrote my first book, I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. I have tenure. I'm not going to write anything else. But then Black Lives Matter began, and every week it was a new person whose name became a hashtag. And in some ways, I turned to Star Trek as a way of dealing with my own grief and anger. And then I said, okay, I need to write about this. And so in a sense, I said, okay, how am I theorizing myself in my late 40s as a Black gay nerd, unrepentant? And then looking at like my own room, my office, and how I developed my own quote unquote geek shrine. And then it's okay, well, I want to write about, or as I say, it's theorizing myself. And then with the advent of the internet and connecting with other Black nerds or blurs, such as yourself, and going, oh my God.
Are you telling all my business right now?
Well, I'm like, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person out here who watches Star Trek or Star Wars or likes this or likes Lord of the Rings or likes, and then, other. So I'm like, okay, I want to pull at least something a little bit from the first book where I wrote a little bit about Samuel Delaney. And then I'd written a piece that appeared in Monica Coleman's Ain't I a Womanist about Octavia Butler and Michelle Ndegeocello. And so I said, okay, I want to pull all of this together and really get into this to Afrofuturism and what this means and how this can be a resource for Black religious thought and vice versa. So, because you were saying, hey, we go to AAR, but we don't hear many people talking about Afrofuturism. But on the flip side, how many Afrofuturists deal with religion or Black religion in a way? Well, I take that back. I should really correct myself. I think they do, but I think there's a conversation that can be opened up, and that's what I'm hoping that this book does: is to open a conversation, a more sustained conversation, for those of us who do Black religious scholarship and Afrofuturism and Afrofuturists who want to talk to Black religious scholars.
So it's like it's another, we would say, genre or methodology for talking about Black religions. And we're always talking about Black religions in some way, shape, or form, but here's this additional toolbox or, set of lenses through which we can say, well, how do we imagine something like, because I always say, what is religion? Religion helps us identify what's the meaning of life, who am I, why am I here, and what happens to me when I die. And so it's like Afrofuturism gives us additional ways of trying to talk about those things, trying to answer those questions. And it's so rich, for Black people. And as it goes into, as we see it more in Black pop culture, it's really fascinating. So someone like, you mentioned Octavia Butler in terms of literature, but Janelle Monae right now, she's really doing a thing, right? And if you're not aware of Afrofuturism, you just might appreciate her, for her music and for her fashion style or that kind of thing. What do you make of her?
Oh, my goodness, I have a whole chapter on her.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've titled it something about, or the subtitle is Janelle Monae as Queer Afrofuturistic Savior. She is doing it in a way, and I think, again, for her, the influences are multiple. I mean, you can look at her, you can see Sun Ra, you see Octavia Butler, you see her use of imagery like Fritz Lang's Metropolis. You see her creating this kind of gumbo of Afro-Futurism, this narrative, the Cindy Mayweather narrative, then leads into this last album, Dirty Computer, where I think she's beginning to shed that science fictional narrative while still holding on to it. She's not completely getting rid of it, but she's elevating it. So Janelle Monae is, in terms of music right now, is doing the. I wish I knew more about musicology, because or ethnomusicology, because I think it would be a really richer chapter, kind of delve into the sonic influences, to look at not just the videos or the emotion pictures, not just look at that and look at her style, but also listen to the music itself. But that's a bit outside of my that's not my wheelhouse, sadly.
All right. All right. Oh, if only we had more time. Well, I'm going to pause this right here, Dr. Sneed, because I'm going to just wrap up this segment. This is segment 1. Okay. And Dr. Sneed and I will continue the conversation on the longer, the extended. So I hope you'll join us over there on Patreon. But for now, we're going to pause. So hang on, people.